Hey everybody, Matty here with Altcoin Buzz. Happy Thursday. Hope you're having a great week. We're discussing today new comments from best-selling author, I should say, Robert Kiyosaki, who's saying there's a very good chance that Bitcoin may go parabolic in response to what's happening right now with the economy, with coronavirus, with this, quote, unlimited money supply that the Federal Reserve and other central banks are providing. Robert Kiyosaki, of course, is the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We're going to take a look at his comments and everything that's been said. We're also going to take a look at some of the proposals that are on the table here, courtesy of Business Insider. A little bit of an update from Washington. House Democrats introduce plan to pay Americans $2,000 a month until economy recovers from COVID-19. And we'll also see, related to that on newsbtc.com, Bitcoin sees rocketing new user inflow while looming economic crisis spur adoption. We're never going to root for an economic crisis to be the catalyst for cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. However, these two things are related. So I don't want to be a cheerleader for doomsday or the apocalypse, but I think that is going to provide an opportunity for Bitcoin to respond if stuff really hits the fan. So we'll take a look at those stories. We'll also first take a look here at the markets on coinmarketcap.com. $200.5 billion total market cap. Things up pretty handsomely since yesterday in these last 24 hours. Bitcoin up 3.55%. Ethereum up 7.95%. Other projects similarly up 3, 4, 5, 6, 7%. EOS notably up 8.83%. At the time of this recording, Bitcoin sits at $6,999, still just shy of that 7K resistance point. Dominance right now is 63.9%, which is a little bit lower than we've been typically seeing lately. So according to Robert Kiyosaki, and he's, by the way, the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is one of the world's best-selling personal finance books, he said that Bitcoin stands to go parabolic after COVID-19 ends. And this is a tweet from April 13th. There's a series of tweets, actually. He called the current pandemic a great thing for Bitcoin. He also issued the following quote: "The reason I endorse Bitcoin is just for one reason. You're not part of the system." So let's take a look at what he said specifically. Again, here from the 13th of April. "Is Fed broke?" referring to the Federal Reserve. "Hidden in recent $2.2 trillion Congress rescue bill was buried a $425 billion amount for the Fed. Fed has been bailing out the world since 2008, and that's referring to the 2008 economic crisis, the collapse of Lehman Brothers and others in the housing market. Fed has been bailing out the world since that time. Who bails out the Fed? Now we know we are. Why are Fed and Treasury hiding this from us? Buy more gold, silver, and Bitcoin. Screwed in capital letters." And then a little bit more recently here from the 15th of April, "Corona crisis great for gold, silver, Bitcoin. U.S. government printing $10 trillion in fake U.S. dollars to save U.S. Fed printing $10 trillion to save shadow banks. Dollar in bull market for now. When dollar bear market begins, gold, silver, Bitcoin, parabolic. Best investments today. Do not miss out." And then from later on that afternoon, on the 15th of April, "Gold and silver, God's money. Bitcoin, open source people's money. Bitcoin, gold, and silver important because not controlled by Fed, Treasury, or Wall Street." A very important point, not controlled by anybody other than the algorithm. Get it? Even if unemployed, real silver still available at about $25 for US Silver Eagle. Everyone can afford $25. Get it? Some very strong comments, and related to those are this piece on U.Today. "Rich Dad, Poor Dad author regrets not buying Bitcoin back in 2009. Well, don't we all? But a little bit more realistically here, also U.Today. "Bitcoin beyond Fed's control. Anyone can buy fraction." According to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He said that you can put $25 into a silver eagle. I believe that's a coin, but it's a silver investment, essentially. So if you could put $25 into that, you could put $25 into a lot of things. And Bitcoin isn't the only thing you should be putting perhaps some money into. But everybody, if they can afford that $25 worth of silver, I think it stands to reason, hey, they can also afford $25 worth of Bitcoin. That's what's nice about it being so divisible. So this article here doesn't really go into much more than what we've already seen. It kind of sums up the tweets. We have never really covered Mr. Kiyosaki, again, author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I really didn't know he had this kind of a mindset, or that he was into Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. I had heard before that he was into precious metals as hedges against an economy that maybe he didn't have too much confidence in. But this, I think, spells it out very clearly. He's perhaps not a frontline Bitcoin bull, but he certainly believes in the idea and the system over the fiat currency system, that is for sure. And I'm a devotee of the man. I grew up reading some of his material, so this is very encouraging to see. I really like it. It's heartening news as far as I'm concerned. Let us know your thoughts about it, guys, in the comments below. One last tweet here before switching gears. Fed cannot go broke in theory, but people can lose confidence in Fed and the US dollar. The $425 billion US gave Fed secretly will expand to $4.25 trillion of fake dollars into economy for over $9 trillion in fake Fed money. Monopoly money, in other words. When confidence goes, game over. And the International Monetary Fund steps in. IMF stands for I am effed. Related to everything that Robert Kiyosaki is talking about is this news, courtesy here of BusinessInsider.com. House Democrats introduce plan to pay Americans $2,000 a month until economy recovers from COVID-19. This is getting into rather controversial territory. We've kind of covered the relief packages that have been put forward by the Federal Reserve, by President Donald Trump, and by other government officials. And I understand that, the idea of a stimulus package or a relief package can be important in the short term, especially for people that have been laid off. The argument goes that essentially the government is asking you not to participate in the economy. They're asking you to stay home. They're asking you to help flatten the curve of this COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, that's fair. So if the government wants to impose that rule on you and ban you from participating in what you regularly do to earn an income, then I think it's fair. It stands to reason that the government should compensate you for that or provide relief to some effect. Okay, I get that. But as I've discussed before, if the economy is not producing anything, if we're not productive and we're not generating actual wealth, if we're just redistributing what's already there, all of these stimulus funds, the longer they go on, the more we're borrowing from ourselves in the future. And that is a problem, and that's something that personally I stand against. There's also the argument that at a certain point, the pandemic is perhaps ongoing, but it's manageable. And the damage done by extending the quarantine and turning a recession perhaps into a depression, that damage is worse, even in terms of death toll quantitatively. That's actually worse than anything the pandemic would have naturally provided on its own. So at a certain point, even if we're not back to 100%, even if the pandemic is still lingering, I think there is an argument to open the economy back up, because if that completely collapses, then that's a very bleak picture. That's something that's far worse, again, in my opinion, than whatever the pandemic could muster on its own. But, with that kind of preface aside, I want to ask you guys about what you think about, generally speaking, about these $2,000, whether it's $2,000, $1,000, more or less, whatever. But what do you guys think about this kind of almost universal basic income? We're, in a way, experimenting with it, and the catalyst for that, of course, has been coronavirus. But I just don't understand the logic here. I keep seeing people personally in my social circle on Facebook pushing for this, praising the idea that now, this is a great opportunity. It's too bad where I am in Canada, we're not already under a UBI system, and people commenting with a lot of snark that, maybe this will show them, this will finally turn the tide and convince people. Generally speaking, I'm not into wealth redistribution. I'm into wealth creation strategies, but that's just me. But even let's, for the sake of argument, I'll play devil's advocate here. Even if the idea is to address the issue of wealth inequality, so even if the economy can function, let's say you're still productive as a nation. I don't think you would be if everybody were to receive UBI, but let's say for the sake of argument that were the case, and the idea is just to get everybody on the same page to kind of prop up those that are struggling in society and provide UBI so that everybody has something available and everybody has spending money in their pocket. Well, again, my big concern is that if everybody has automatically generated funds, that they're not going to be producing anymore, and there's all kinds of other implications that follow. For example, the regular cost of groceries and day-to-day essentials are going to rise because the cost of labor is going to go up. But again, all of that aside for the time being, if you just want everybody to be equal and everybody to have a good source of income, okay, I get it. That's a noble intention. That's a good-hearted goal. But are you not allowed to then invest that money? What happens to those people that if they get that $2,000 a month, maybe maybe they win the lottery, or maybe they invest in wildly successful stocks. Maybe they start a business, and then maybe that $2,000 per month snowballs into $20,000, $200,000 a month. Next thing you know, they're millionaires. I mean, how do you compensate for that? How do you, through government authority, dictate that everybody should be on the same level of wealth financially? It's just not possible. And what happens if you're a drug addict? Are you not able to also just blow all your money on drugs or alcohol? Or maybe you make bad decisions. Maybe you lose it at the racetrack. To me, there's no quick and easy solution to equality. I don't think it exists. That's a hard truth and a hard pill that many of us haven't yet accepted, but that is my personal take. So, long rant aside, we have this news about allocating $2,000 per month to every American citizen. It's the bill currently being discussed in Washington. So, in brief, the Emergency Money for the People Act, introduced by Reps Tim Ryan and Ro Khanna, would give $2,000 US a month to Americans over the age of 16 who make less than $130,000 a year. So the vast majority of people. The payments would continue for at least 6 months and would last until unemployment falls to pre-coronavirus levels. Quote, a one-time US $1,200 check isn't going to cut it, Khanna said. Americans need sustained cash infusions for the duration of the crisis in order to come out on the other side alive, healthy, and ready to go back to work. I mean, already I don't agree with the premise here. Let's say the coronavirus has done serious damage to the economy, and that clause here about the unemployment level, let's say that doesn't return to standard levels for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. So these individuals, according to these proposed rules, are just going to continue collecting $2,000 a month for 5 years until unemployment figures retrace to what they were. And by the way, for them to retrace is going to be very significant because they were at historical lows before the coronavirus started. So already I disagree with some of the terms here and some of the rhetoric that's being thrown around. I do agree in the short term that there is room to provide relief. Like I said, the federal government is asking us to stay home. They're asking us not to engage in our careers and our jobs in most cases. Therefore, if that is the case and if that's something that is enforced, then yes, they ought to compensate by helping us out. But there's got to be an end to it. It's got to have a very strict time horizon, and it's got to have a due date, or at least an aspirational one where we can all kind of get back to things and get back to work and life as normal. Because the longer this continues, the more the economic impacts are going to, and the bad economics impact is what I'm saying, the more those are going to outweigh any natural or organic impacts, including death toll caused by the pandemic itself. Finally, here on newsbtc.com, Bitcoin sees rocketing new user inflow. Will looming economic crisis spur adoption? Again, nobody's rooting for a global pandemic or an economic crash or an apocalypse in order to help prop up the price and the performance of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. However, they do kind of go hand in hand for a lot of the libertarian-oriented individuals such as myself that feel there's too much involvement already in government. When governments start to fail, that's when people like myself, when economies start to falter, that's when people like myself start to see, perhaps put a little bit more into Bitcoin, perhaps get excited about it. It's not to say I'm rooting against the system, but unfortunately there is a correlation between the two. And I think the argument can be made here that the economic crisis will spur adoption, will spur, more important than anything, the legitimacy of Bitcoin. So check out this article in full. Let us know your thoughts about that in the comments below. But that about wraps it up for today, everybody. Let me know your thoughts about those mini rants I went on. But as always, do be sure you're following us on all the regular social media channels. Keep checking back into altcoinbuzz.io for all the latest. Go ahead and like, subscribe, share, and hit the bell to receive notifications, of course, if you've enjoyed today's video. Best of luck if you choose to invest on this Thursday. Have a great one, everybody, and we'll see you again tomorrow on Friday, hopefully in our next video. Take care.